How could you do this to her? She's such a good woman. And you've been lying to her for years. I'll start by saying this wasn't the way I imagined my relationship would end. But life's funny like that. You think you know someone, trust them completely, only for it all to come crashing down. Her name was Emily. We'd been together for almost 3 years, and we had built a life that, from the outside, looked perfect. I was 27, she was 25. We met in college and hit it off immediately. She was smart, funny, and incredibly caring. I thought I was the luckiest guy in the world to have her. But over the past few months, something started feeling off. Emily had changed. She'd become distant, often staying out late, coming back with excuses about work or hanging out with friends. She didn't text or call as much, and I couldn't help but feel like there was a wall growing between us. At first, I thought maybe I was being paranoid, but there was this nagging feeling in my gut that something was wrong. Still, I didn't have concrete evidence to confront her. I wasn't the type of guy who would accuse someone without proof. I didn't want to look like a jealous, insecure boyfriend. But the longer things went on, the more suspicious I became. Then one evening, everything changed. Emily came home late, looking exhausted. I was sitting on the couch when she walked in, and for a moment, I just stared at her. I could see she was holding something back, like she was building up to say something she didn't want to. And then, she finally spoke. "Mark, I need to tell you something." The tone of her voice immediately put me on edge. She said it so casually, as if what she was about to say wasn't going to shatter everything we had. "I cheated on you." I froze. My heart dropped to my stomach. I wasn't shocked, exactly, but I couldn't believe she had just admitted it so easily. I didn't know what to say. I wasn't prepared for this, not mentally, not emotionally. But I did know one thing for sure. I couldn't let her see how much it hurt. And then, in that moment, I did something unexpected. Without thinking, I looked her dead in the eyes and said, "Funny you say that, because I've been cheating on you too, since the beginning of our relationship." The silence that followed was deafening. She looked at me, completely stunned, like she had just heard something she couldn't comprehend. What do you mean?" "With who?" she stuttered, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't even hesitate. I made it up on the spot. I told her I had been sleeping with another woman casually for months, and that it had happened several times. Her reaction was priceless. She was furious, completely furious. She started yelling at me, calling me a jerk, accusing me of being a manipulator. The irony of it was almost too much. She was screaming at me for something I had just made up, while she had actually done the very thing she was accusing me of. She started pacing back and forth, gesturing like she was going to do something drastic, like break something or slash my tires. It was like watching a bomb about to explode, but luckily she didn't go that far. "Who is she?" she demanded. "Doesn't matter now," I said coldly. "What matters is that our relationship is over." Her face went pale. "You're breaking up with me? After everything you've done?" I could see the shock on her face, but I didn't care. "I only said that to see how you'd react. But yes, I'm breaking up with you. And unlike you, I don't need to make up excuses for my actions." She turned red with anger. At that moment, I knew I had crossed a line, but honestly, I didn't regret it. This was the truth I had been waiting for. I gathered her things, shoved them into a bag, and told her to leave. She kept yelling, trying to defend herself, but I just didn't care anymore. After she left, I called my friends and invited them over for a barbecue. It felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. As the night went on, I told them the story of what had happened. We all laughed, drank beer, and just hung out. It was a strange feeling, relief mixed with a bit of dark satisfaction. I had always suspected something was off, but now I had confirmation. The whole situation had turned into some sort of twisted, ironic joke, and I couldn't help but feel a little victorious. I thought that was the end of it. I thought the worst was over. But I was wrong.
So wrong.
The days after Emily left were surprisingly peaceful. I felt this sense of freedom I hadn't realized I'd been missing. It wasn't just the fact that we broke up. It was the relief of knowing I didn't have to constantly second-guess her actions or live with that sinking feeling in my gut. The silence in the house was comforting, like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I didn't expect things to be easy, but I definitely didn't expect what came next. A few days later, my phone started blowing up. First, it was messages from my friends, then family. Notifications from social media flooded in. My heart sank as I opened the first message from my best friend, Tyler. "Bro, what the hell is going on? I just saw a post about you on Facebook. What's this I'm hearing?" I opened the link he had sent me, and there it was, Emily's face, looking like she had just been through some emotional storm. The caption read, "Heartbroken. Destroyed by the lies and betrayal of someone I loved with all my heart. #broken. I couldn't believe it. She was telling everyone that I had been the one to cheat. She wasn't just saying it to a few people, she was spreading it like wildfire, turning the whole story around. The worst part? She made it sound like I'd been cheating on her for years. I immediately started getting calls from family members. My mom was furious. "How could you do this to her? She's such a good woman, and you've been lying to her for years." I tried explaining. I told her everything, the confession, my reaction, the lie I told to see how Emily would respond, but she didn't believe me. None of them did. The story Emily told was so convincing, so detailed, that no one even considered the possibility that it wasn't true. Aunt Linda, who hardly ever calls me, sent me this long message about how today's relationships were falling apart because of people like me. It was like the entire world had decided I was guilty, and the more I tried to explain myself, the worse it got. But what really shocked me was the video she posted. Emily had made a video, crying, talking about how she had discovered my betrayal and how devastated she was. She said I had been living a double life, secretly seeing another woman while pretending to be in love with her. She talked about how much she had given to our relationship, how she had trusted me, and how I had destroyed her life with my lies. It felt like I was in some kind of sick joke. Here she was acting like the victim, when she was the one who had cheated on me. And now, she was turning everything around, painting me as the villain. The video went viral. Mutual friends shared it. My relatives saw it. My coworkers started sending me messages. Everyone had their opinions, and none of them were in my favor. My boss called me into his office, not directly about the video, but he made it clear he had heard rumors about my behavior. It was humiliating. At that point, I realized she wasn't just trying to get back at me, she was trying to ruin my life. She was doing everything she could to destroy my reputation, and she was succeeding. I even tried to defend myself on social media. I posted messages showing that the story she was telling was a lie, that I had told my friends the truth about the situation. But it didn't matter. No one wanted to believe me. People wanted to believe the emotional, heartbroken woman who had been wronged. A man admitting he didn't cheat? That didn't sound believable to the public. It felt like I was drowning. The more I tried to explain myself, the deeper I sank. The public had already made their judgment, and nothing I said would change it. I was a manipulator, a liar, a narcissist. And Emily? She wasn't done yet. She showed up at my parents' house. Can you imagine? She had the nerve to go there, crying, asking my mom for help to heal from the devastation I had caused her. My mom, of course, believed her completely. She even posted a picture on Facebook of her hugging Emily with a caption saying, "There's always room for forgiveness." It was like living in a nightmare. I couldn't escape it. I tried contacting Emily, texting, calling, but she ignored me completely. It was clear that she had no interest in hearing what I had to say. Her goal was to ruin me, and she was doing a damn good job of it. I thought about posting the full truth, sharing the evidence I had, messages, screenshots, the proof that she had started this whole mess, but honestly, what would it change? Her narrative was already out there, and people believed it. Anything I said would just sound like an excuse. I started blocking people on social media, but it didn't stop. People kept sending me messages calling me a monster, accusing me of everything under the sun. Even some of my close friends started avoiding me, unsure of who to believe. And you know what the worst part was? It wasn't just the public humiliation. It was that I was helpless. I had no control over the story anymore. My name was being dragged through the mud, and I couldn't do anything to stop it. I decided to try something drastic. I consulted a lawyer. I had to do something to protect myself, my reputation, my life. The lawyer told me I had a solid case for defamation and slander. He helped me gather evidence, messages, screenshots, and even the videos that Emily had posted. When the case went to court, I thought maybe, just maybe, I could clear my name. But the truth didn't come easy. The court case dragged on longer than I'd hoped. Every hearing felt like a battle, and the more I fought, the more I realized how deep this situation had gotten. Emily wasn't just playing a game of revenge, she was playing a game of survival. She was determined to win, no matter the cost, even if it meant sinking me in the process. But what shocked me the most was the way she manipulated everything to her advantage. I thought I had the upper hand with the evidence, the texts, the messages, the screenshots proving she was the one who had lied first, the one who had cheated. But Emily's lawyer was smart. They twisted everything I presented. They painted her as the heartbroken woman who had no choice but to lash out after being hurt. It wasn't just a trial about facts, it was a trial about emotions. And Emily was good at playing the victim. It's strange, when you're faced with something like this, you start questioning your own reality. I found myself doubting my own decisions, my actions, and even my memories. Maybe I had missed something. Maybe I had been blind to something I should have seen. But then I would snap out of it. The truth was, Emily had been the one who had betrayed me. She had left me for someone else. I had been faithful, but that didn't matter to the people watching. In court, Emily painted herself as the woman who had given everything to the relationship. She said she had sacrificed so much for me, and in return, I had crushed her with my betrayal. Her tears were so convincing, her voice so shaky, that I saw the jury soften. I could see it in their eyes. They were starting to pity her. Then came my turn to speak. I had rehearsed everything I was going to say 1,000 times, but as I stood up, I felt like the room was closing in on me. I had always been confident in my convictions, but in that moment, I felt small. How could I convince people I hadn't done what she claimed? How could I make them see the truth when everything seemed to be stacked against me? I spoke slowly, carefully, trying to stay calm. I told them about our relationship, how it had started, the moments that had felt real, the plans we had made together. And then I told them about the cheating. I explained how she had confessed to me about her affair and how, in that moment, I had been blindsided. I told them about the emotional toll it had taken on me, about the broken trust. I explained how I hadn't wanted to hurt her, but that I had tried to see if she would admit to her wrongs. And yet, as I spoke, I could feel the walls closing in on me. The jury was listening, but I could tell they were already leaning toward Emily's side. They saw a broken woman, and then they saw me, a man standing there unemotional, trying to defend himself. It was like I was being judged for not reacting in the way they expected. I'll never forget the moment the verdict came down. The judge ruled in Emily's favor. It wasn't about the facts or the evidence. It wasn't even about who was right or wrong. It was about who they believed. And in the eyes of the court, Emily had won. She was the victim, the heartbroken one, and I was the man who had destroyed her life. I felt like the world had been pulled out from under me. I didn't know how to react. My lawyer told me we could appeal, but deep down, I knew it wouldn't make a difference. The damage had been done. Emily had won the public sympathy, and that was all that mattered. Walking out of the courthouse, I felt numb. My phone was blowing up again with messages, this time more aggressive. People had seen the news, and now they were coming for me. They called me a monster, a liar, a manipulator. They sent me nasty comments, accusing me of everything under the sun. I didn't know what to do anymore. I felt like I was drowning in a sea of lies. Everything I had built, my reputation, my friendships, my career, was falling apart. I had tried to explain myself, tried to fight back, but nothing seemed to matter. The world had already made up its mind. I was guilty. Emily, on the other hand, was thriving. She had used the court case to further cement her story. She made posts on social media, talking about how strong she was for overcoming the trauma I had caused her. She shared pictures of herself smiling, of her life moving on without me. And people praised her for her strength, for her courage. But I knew the truth. I knew the real story. and it haunted me every day. I tried to reach out to a few close friends, Tyler, Sarah, but it was like no one wanted to hear it. They had already made their decisions, and they weren't interested in hearing what I had to say. It wasn't just about the court case anymore. It was about my entire life unraveling in front of me. The job I had worked so hard for started to feel like a prison. People at work would avoid looking me in the eye. The customers who used to be friendly now gave me cold stares. I didn't know where to go from here. I had lost everything. And yet, I couldn't help but feel this nagging question in the back of my mind. What if Emily was right? What if I had missed something? What if everything I had been feeling and thinking was just a lie I told myself to justify my actions? It was like a fog had settled in my mind. The world outside kept spinning, but I was stuck, suspended in time, drowning in this mess we had created together. I spent the next few days in a haze. The world felt like it was moving on without me, and I was standing still, unable to catch up. It's a strange feeling when you realize you've lost control of your own life. Every decision, every step, seemed to be influenced by forces I couldn't even see. Emily had won the court case, and she wasn't just celebrating her victory. She was rewriting our history, making herself out to be the person who had been wronged, the person who had fought for love, for healing. She was making the world believe that I was the villain, the manipulator. And it hurt more than I'd ever imagined. I tried to go back to my routine, to find something familiar to hold on to. But nothing felt right anymore. I showed up to work, but the smiles I used to get from colleagues now seemed forced. It was like I was carrying this invisible weight that no one could see but everyone could feel. I could sense the judgment in their eyes, and I knew that the rumors were already out there, circulating faster than the truth could catch up. I knew Emily had been telling her version of the story to anyone who would listen. She had always been the kind of person who thrived on attention, but now it was like she was crafting a masterpiece of sympathy, painting herself as the broken, betrayed woman who had risen from the ashes of our relationship. And I was the one who had burned her. But the thing is, the more I thought about it, the more I realized I hadn't just lost the court case. I'd lost myself. I was no longer sure of who I was, of what I stood for. I had tried so hard to fight for what was right, but it felt like every time I took a step forward, Emily pulled me 2 steps back. I couldn't tell if I was still trying to prove my innocence, or if I was just trying to make myself feel better. A few days after the verdict, I found myself sitting in a quiet corner of a cafe, staring at my phone. I had received dozens of messages, but most of them had come from people who were either praising Emily or condemning me. I opened the text from Sarah. She had been one of my closest friends, but we hadn't talked much since the trial. "Hey, I've been thinking about everything that happened," the message started. "And I just want you to know that I'm here for you. If you need to talk, I'm all ears. But I also think it might be time to let go of the past and start focusing on yourself. You can't keep drowning in this, okay?" I stared at her words for a long time. Sarah had always been the voice of reason in my life, the one who told me when to push forward and when to pull back. But now it felt like even she was telling me to move on. I didn't know if I was ready for that. How could I let go of something that had been such a huge part of my life? But then it hit me. Maybe Sarah was right. Maybe I had been holding on to something for too long, something that wasn't healthy for me anymore. Emily had her story and I had mine. The court had made its decision. The world had made its decision. And in a way, so had I. I needed to find a way to live with it, to find peace within myself, no matter what everyone else thought. The next morning, I woke up and made a decision. I wasn't going to keep fighting for a version of the truth that no one was ever going to believe. Instead, I decided to focus on rebuilding myself, my career, my friendships, my sense of self. It wasn't going to be easy, but I knew I had to start somewhere. I reached out to a few old friends, the ones who hadn't turned their backs on me, and slowly started to reconnect. I spent more time with my family, people who had always had my back, no matter what. And over time, I started to find bits of myself again, the pieces of me that I had lost in the chaos of the past few months. And then one day, Emily reached out. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't a plea for reconciliation. It was a simple message, one that felt almost final. "I just want you to know that I'm okay," she wrote. "I hope you can find peace too." At first, I didn't know how to respond. It was like she was offering me a parting gift, her version of closure. I thought about it for a long time, sitting with her words in my head. Was I ready to let go of all the anger? Could I truly forgive her for everything that had happened? And then I realized something. I didn't need to forgive her right now. I didn't need to do anything for her. I needed to do something for me. So I took a deep breath and typed back, "I'm finding my peace, Emily. Thank you for letting me know." And with that, I closed the door on that chapter of my life. It wasn't a clean break. It wasn't an easy one. But it was the beginning of something new. It's strange, isn't it? How life keeps moving forward, even when you feel stuck in time. I kept hearing people say that everything happens for a reason, that the universe has a plan. But in the midst of all the noise, I couldn't help but wonder if that was just a comfort people told themselves when things didn't make sense. The months after the court case felt like a slow unraveling. I'd expected to feel free, to feel like I had put the past behind me. But instead, there was a quiet ache, a space inside me that still felt empty, as if all the chaos had left a scar that couldn't be erased. And as much as I wanted to move on, it was hard to ignore the weight of it all. I had gone back to therapy, something I hadn't done in years. There was no shame in it, I told myself. In fact, it felt like the most honest thing I could do. It wasn't about fixing myself. It was about understanding who I had become, who I was still capable of being. My therapist, a woman named Linda, was one of the first people who didn't try to sugarcoat things. She didn't tell me everything would be okay. She didn't tell me that time would heal all wounds. Instead, she just listened. And somehow that was all I needed. "It's okay to feel lost," she told me during one of our sessions. "It's okay to not have everything figured out. You're not broken, you're just changing. And change is hard. It's painful. But it's also where the real growth happens." I had never heard it put that way before. The idea that pain wasn't something to run from, but something to embrace, was a concept I struggled with at first. But slowly, it started to make sense. I had been running from the pain for so long, trying to escape it by focusing on the past, on Emily, on the court case. But maybe the answer wasn't in the past. Maybe it was in the present, in how I chose to move forward. I started to spend more time alone, reflecting on everything that had happened. I needed to understand the full picture, not just the parts that made me feel good about myself. I had to face the things I didn't want to admit, the choices I had made, the mistakes I had made, the ways I had hurt others and myself. And in that quiet, I began to realize that healing wasn't a straight path. It wasn't about getting to some end point where everything would magically be okay. It was about learning to live with the broken pieces, learning to find beauty in them. One of the things that helped me the most during this time was something I hadn't expected. I started journaling, pouring my thoughts onto paper like a slow, steady stream. It wasn't a daily habit at first, but as the weeks went by, I found myself craving it. Writing became a way for me to make sense of the confusion inside my head. I could look at what I had written, and it was like seeing the pieces of myself that had been scattered all over the place slowly coming back together. One entry stood out to me more than the rest. Maybe there's no final destination. Maybe it's all about the journey, about who I become along the way. It was a simple thought, but it felt profound. I didn't have to have everything figured out. I didn't have to be perfect. I just had to be honest with myself. And maybe that's where the real peace would come from, not from finding some perfect answer, but from accepting the uncertainty and trusting that I could handle it. As I continued to heal, I began to feel a shift in my relationships. I had always relied on others to define me, to validate my choices. But now I realized that the only validation I needed was my own. I didn't need anyone's approval. I didn't need to prove anything anymore. The people who truly cared about me would stay, and the ones who didn't, well, they weren't the ones I needed in my life. Emily had sent me that message, and I had given her my peace. But in the process, I had also found my own peace, my own closure. I didn't need her to be part of my journey anymore. I had to let go of the idea of us, of what we once were, and accept that some things were never meant to last. The weeks turned into months, and life started to feel a little lighter. I felt more grounded, more at home in myself. There were still days when I thought about Emily, when I wondered if she was doing okay. But those thoughts no longer consumed me. I had my own path now, and that was enough. I learned that healing wasn't something that happened overnight. It wasn't a clean process. It was messy and unpredictable. But it was mine, and that made all the difference. And one day, I woke up and realized something I hadn't in a long time. I was okay. Not because everything was perfect, but because I had stopped pretending it had to be.